Hi, gang. Good morning. Waiting on a quorum. Let me just see if I can see who we've got here. Fabrizio. Hello, Fabrizio. TC, he beat you. Come on, got to work harder. Hello, Tom Rogers. Good to see you, sir. Dan Betty, Portland, Maine. Hey, lobster is cheap, I hear, huh? John McKenzie. Andra Ossers. Connie Fletcher. Hello, Connie. Tom Duvernay from Korea. So you say, Cara Indelicato Genovese. How'd I do? Gang, I've got a lot of ground to cover here. I want to talk to you about the CNN show, as I always do at this time, but I want to talk about something else as well. Let me begin with what I had on the screen. Have you read the Harper's letter? A letter on justice and open debate. There's this highbrow brouhaha that has been playing itself out this week that causes me, as the title on this Facebook Live suggests, to ask the question today of whether the cancel culture has gone too far. My vote is in the affirmative. No surprise to those of you who listen to me on SiriusXM POTUS, for which I thank you. But let me tell you why I was motivated to address this today in a heavy news cycle. And I also want to share with you that I have written a line for myself that I don't know if I'm going to be able to deliver it on CNN this morning without laughing because I am so sophomoric. The Harper's Magazine piece comes out, and it's signed by about 150 intellectuals. And the premise is this. They talk about the climate taking place all around us, cultural institutions facing a moment of trial. And then they say this needed reckoning has also intensified a new set of moral attitudes and political commitments that tend to weaken our norms of open debate and toleration of differences in favor of ideological conformity. What I think that means is, unless we're all thinking and speaking the same way, somebody's going to get spanked. And there were a lot of famous signatories to this letter. Malcolm Gladwell, J.K. Rowling, who now brings her own set of baggage to the equation. So people begin discussing this. There was instant blowback against these people, which I think proves the point they were making. And then another letter comes out from a second group of intellectuals. By the way, I think the second group of intellectuals are kind of bummed that they weren't asked to sign the first group of intellectuals' letter, because I know I was. And they say that the signatories to that first letter are white, they're wealthy, they're endowed with massive platforms. And then they say, quote, in truth, brown, black, and LGBTQ people, particularly black and trans people, can now critique elites publicly and hold them accountable socially. This seems to be the letter's greatest concern. Now, some of this gets rather highbrow in a hurry and is difficult for me to follow. But you know what I can understand? Beans. Goya beans. And I found it very interesting that in the midst of this intellectual food fight, you've got the CEO of Goya Beans who goes to the White House, heaps praise upon the president, and now people are having a boycott against his beans. And so the beans have been the latest subject of the culture wars. And that is going to be the subject of my opening commentary today. I'm going to talk about the back and forth among the intellectual elite. And then here's what I intend to say. I'll give you a little sneak peek, and I'll share with you the line that I don't think I'm going to be able to deliver. If you're having trouble following the highbrow brouhaha, fear not. I think I can bring home the bombast with a trip to the kitchen cupboard. Beans, Goya beans. The CEO of this kitchen staple was in the Rose Garden on Thursday, where he praised the president while announcing Goya would donate 1 million cans of chickpeas and 1 million other food products to American food banks. And then we'll play sound from the CEO. And then my line is this. I thought of this last night. There hasn't been this much stink about beans since the campfire scene in Blazing Saddles. I'm sorry, every time I think of that movie, that scene in the movie, I can't do it without laughing. So I am going to have to like steel myself into some Stanislavski, method acting. Think of something grisly that will cause me not to laugh when I attempt to say, with regard to Goya, there hasn't been this much stink about beans since the campfire scene in Blazing Saddles. What do you guys think? You like it? Oh man. So anyway, there is that, and the architect of the first letter, the Harper's letter, is Thomas Chatterton Williams, and he will join me. He will be my guest, so I'm psyched about that. All right, let me tell you what else is coming up on the show at 9 a.m., and then I want to tell you something else. I also have David Axelrod. Always love it when David is on the program. David today will be talking about a couple of things that are 2020 related, but I have to ask him about the Roger Stone clemency. I was least surprised about it. Kind of funny, I was on with Brooke Baldwin yesterday at 3 in the afternoon, and I said, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And I said to Brooke Baldwin, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be November 4th, which is the day after the election, it could be January 19, which is the day before the inauguration, but it's going to happen. And then, 5 hours later, it did happen. Art Kaplan will join me to talk about the ethics of kids going back to school. That's really the big issue of the week, apart from the whole climate and First Amendment and conversation things that I referenced. And I want to talk to Art about, here's what strikes me is there's an issue here that needs to be decided as to whether we are making a health decision or whether making an economic decision. If it's a health decision about the kids, that's one thing. If it's an economic decision about their parents, that's different. And that's what I hope to pursue with Art Kaplan. Ellie Honig will also join me. Ellie, a former Southern District prosecutor, really bright guy. You see him a lot on CNN. Because here's my specific question about the Ghislaine Maxwell prosecution. Are the feds interested in her little black book? I know the public is. I am. I know the media members are. I have watched, and you've heard me discuss maybe on radio, Filthy Rich. It's really great, man. 5-part documentary about Jeffrey Epstein. The only critique that I have is that there's a woman at the Miami Herald, reporter, who did a hell of a job, was dogged in her pursuit of Epstein, and they give her short shrift. TC, if you remember who I'm talking about, put her name up on the screen so that it'll be a part of the record here, okay? So anyway, that's my focus today. My focus is opening commentary. Subject survey question of the day is whether the cancel culture has gone too far. I will talk about the intellectual food fight, and I will bring in the beans. And hopefully I will deliver that line with a straight face, but don't bet on it. I will talk to David Axelrod about the 2020 campaign. I also want to ask him about Tom Friedman saying that Biden should not debate the president. Art Kaplan on school reopenings, Ellie Honig on Ghislaine Maxwell. And then I'm going to promote what I really want to talk to you about, which is this. I have never had a CNN special before. I have one, and it's tonight. Please pray for no breaking news, because I've been promoting it, and CNN has done a great job in promoting it. I've obviously seen the final product, and I'm really excited about it. So please, President Trump, don't do a damn thing tonight. Go to bed early and don't screw me up. Here's the background of it, and those of you who pay attention to me on Facebook Live and on SiriusXM POTUS, you know a lot of this, but for the benefit of others, let me just quickly tell you a story, if I may. In 2018, my last book came out. It was called Clowns to the Left of Me, Jokers to the Right, American Life in Columns. And the subtitle, American Life in Columns, became the title of a speech that I began delivering, telling stories drawn from the book. The book was 100 of my more memorable newspaper columns written over a 15-year time period from 1047 that I had written in that window, that 15-year window. And it was very organic. It was a bit haphazard. I was not like a rock band where I said, here's the tour, and then sold all the tickets and went out according to plan. It was because, frankly, I have a skeletal crew here. TC is extremely competent, and I'm constantly, heaping on her shoulders things that have nothing to do with producing a radio show. Thank you for that, TC. But, we kind of ham and egged it, and yet it was great. It ended up being 24 stops in small theaters across the country, a couple of hundred people in each one, hardcore radio listeners. It was so exhilarating to meet so many people who are fans of the show and see the world similarly, which is in non-ideologic terms. So I had a great experience. Now, here comes 2020. And in 2020, on May 19, I knew I would be marking my 30-year anniversary in talk radio. Literally on that day, on a Saturday night, 30 years ago, I was the guest of a guest host on a Philadelphia radio program, and I got bitten by the bug. And I never looked back. So I began planning a new speech, a new tour, that I was this time going to call Things I Wish I Knew Before I Started Talking, because that was the subtitle of my, I think it was 5th book, which was a memoir of sorts called Morning Drive. So I wanted to expand on what I'd been doing with American Life in Columns, and this time include still images, video, audio, and be more sophisticated about it. So I've been working for months on this speech and trying to figure out how I can go into theaters, small theaters across the country and deliver this new presentation. The first 2 nights were to be in Philadelphia, May 12 and 13 at the Suzanne Roberts Theater. We put those tickets on sale. They sold out within 5 hours. Many of you who are watching me right now were scheduled to come to that, I presume. And I was elated. And working with a guy named Zach Molyneux, I then began planning the other initial 12 stops on the tour. This time, I wanted to roll them all out at once. And then came the pandemic. When the pandemic came, I had to cancel an existing commitment in Bellevue, Washington, an existing commitment in Scottsdale, Arizona, and then I waited and then had to cancel in Philadelphia the launch of the new tour, and never put on sale the next 12 stops. Okay, here's the kicker. Where I had invested all of this time on the presentation, and in this climate of uncertainty as to whether I'd get to go out on the road, something told me to record it, deliver it, record it. I went back to the Suzanne Roberts Theater. That's where I was supposed to launch in Philly, but Philadelphia was still in a lockdown. So near the community in which I was born and raised, I went to a historic playhouse called the Bucks County Playhouse in New Hope, Pennsylvania. Took it over for the day with a professional, masked, socially distant crew. It took 7.5 hours, and I delivered the presentation I had intended to take out on the road. And from the 7.5 hours, we captured an hour and 50 minutes of programming that I then shared with CNN, and Jeff Zucker, the worldwide president, upon seeing what we call a sizzle reel, a 5-minute summary, immediately said to me, "I'll put that on the air." In other words, I went to the Playhouse and recorded this program without telling anybody and without any commitment. I had no idea what the platform would be. I always hoped it would be CNN. And tonight, you're going to see a 1-hour version, frankly less because of commercials, of what I recorded on May 19, which was literally my 30th anniversary in talk radio. And here, my friends, is my favorite part of the story. I had a stage manager named Bill Fennelly. He's also a Drexel professor, and he was very helpful. But the person that I really thank and salute for pulling this off is a childhood friend. I went to Hollycong Junior High School, now called Hollycong Middle School. Back in the day, I went to this brand new middle school, and they had in the school a closed-circuit television system. Morning announcements were delivered by closed-circuit TV, not through a PA system, but every homeroom had a TV set, and piped into the homeroom were the morning announcements, a daily reading, headlines, and so forth. And they were coming from a tiny studio in the school. I always wanted to be an anchor, but I never made the cut. But my friend Chris Strand was the sports anchor. And we were friendly, and we both had aspirations of being in television. Okay, we go to crosstown rivals in high school. He goes to Central Bucks East, I go to Central Bucks West. We're both in an internship program for the dominant radio station in Philadelphia at the time called KYW News Radio. And now we go off to college. Chris goes to Temple for radio, TV, and film. I go to Lehigh for government and journalism. And while we were undergrads, he has a vision. His vision is that he's got this idea for a television short. And that if we put this short together, if we can produce the short, we will be able to sell it to this new cables channel that's called Home Box Office, because that's what they were called at the time. And his idea is that television has become too violent, and very soon we will be televising executions. So let's create a TV show that we call Pay the Price, which has the televising of an execution. Crazy, right? This is fucking crazy. And yet we did it. In fact, on my YouTube page, it's shitty quality, and I apologize, but you can see the video that we created when we were in college. Okay, HBO didn't want it, nobody wanted it, they kind of laughed at us, and then, life came along. So I went and did my thing. He went to New York and opened up his own television production business, and we would get together every year and have a beer or a couple of beers, and inevitably by the third or fourth beer, the subject would be, we should do something together. Look at you, Chris. You have your own business of this independent television production company, and me, I'm a radio talk show host who on the side is a TV commentator. Isn't there something we can do together? So when the pandemic hit and I had this show that I wanted to record, I turned to him. He brought in the crew. He came to the Bucks County Playhouse in New Hope, Pennsylvania. He recorded it, and here's really been the heavy lift. It's not just that he professionally recorded it in a 3-camera shoot. Again, I'm performing to an empty house, 400 empty seats. It's not only that he recorded it, but for the last 45 days, painstakingly, he has had to edit an hour and 50 minutes down to less than an hour. A huge undertaking, but man, it looks good. It really looks good. If you've been on my Facebook page, if you've been in my Instagram account this week, you've seen snippets of it. I am really proud of it. So, pardon me for that lengthy explanation, but I wanted to share with the Facebook Live audience my favorite part of tonight's special on CNN. Sure, I've got a message that I'm going to deliver. I'm going to tell stories. I have a serious message about polarization. The parts that didn't end up on the cutting room floor, some of it's going to look familiar to people who came out for American Life in Columns, even though the new show was like 85% brand new material. I'm proud of all of the substance. But I really wanted to tell you the background story of two junior high school buddies who 40 years later, 40 years after they co-conspired and dreamed of doing a TV project, finally have one. Is that unbelievable? So tonight tonight is the night that airs on CNN. And now you know, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story. That's why I'm so excited about it. That's why I'm so excited. It's a good show, but just as you watch, think of what was going on behind the stages. Is that what I meant to say? Behind the scenes. So, Gene Hakel says, great story. I hope, Gene. I hope you guys can understand that. So, Bruce, do you think you are of compelling interest? I don't know, Bruce. I don't know, because the show is reflections of my career. I've been very blessed. I've been very, very fortunate. I hope that people who don't know, here, Bruce, maybe there was a little snark in your question. I don't know what was intended with your question, but I'll give you a serious answer. The challenge for me is whether someone who's never heard of me, someone who's never watched me, can click through tonight, stop, and be interested in it. And the reason that I hope they would is if you saw the full show. The full show is very much about rejection. It's not me thumping my chest and saying, look at me, I've got this TV show and a radio gig. No. What I most enjoy is walking through all of the disappointment, the ups and the downs, the fact that for 5 years, I guest hosted Bill O'Reilly's radio show, paying my dues, thinking that would be my show someday, and then was told when he quit, nah, not you. Or how for 5 years, I guest hosted Hardball for Chris Matthews, and I was thinking I was paying my dues so that someday that would be my show. No, that didn't happen either. And the funny thing is, I was doing both of those shows at the same time. So when I speak to students, in fact, I've delivered a commencement speech on exactly this subject. I walked out at Widener University, and I said, let me tell you something. By the way, guys, I got to wrap this the hell up because I just looked at the clock. But let me just finish this if I may. So I walk out at Widener University to deliver a commencement speech, and I said, it was pouring rain. It didn't go as I would have hoped because of the weather. But I walked out and I said, look, you know why I've been invited to be your commencement speaker? I've been invited to be your commencement speaker because I have a radio gig, and I have a TV gig, and I've written a lot of books. I guess that sounds impressive. But let me tell you the backstory. And then I laid out for them all of the rejection along the way. And I talked all about rejection. And I said, your fate when you leave here today is going to be determined by how you deal with rejection. Not how you deal with success, but how you deal with rejection. So, anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate this large audience. I'll see you at 9 a.m., I hope, on CNN this morning. Business as usual. I hope I can deliver my Blazing Saddles line without, bursting out laughing. But whatever you're doing tonight, I hope you're with me. Set the DVR if not. And just know that a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into what you're watching. And most importantly, it is the culmination of childhood dreams. Literally, the culmination of childhood dreams. 2 punks from Bucks County who are in junior high school saying, we should have a TV show. And now we do, at least for one night. See ya.